Yep. It's the Man Eater 38. And I am back because the tethers are really busy. And as the election comes up for 2026 and 2028, they are going to step their game up, right? And the whole thing is to make the FBAs us. Because if you're an American Negro, you're FBA, you're ADOS, you're Freedmen, or whatever. Like, we're all one, right? So if they call one FBA a cult member or some black identity extremist or something like that, or a communist group, because this is what they're trying to line up right now, we're all in this together. And the FBAs, I understand people are split up, but the foundational Black Americans is our lineage. All of us are foundational Black Americans. Now, you may not want to use the acronym as your ethnic description, because we're having that, back and forth. Some people want to be considered indigenous. Some people want to be considered American Negro, like myself and others. Some people want to be ADOS, ADOS, or whatever. But ultimately, the government is going to decide. And there were only two that were up for grabs the last time that I checked. Okay, so we are going to end up with one of those. But in the meantime, if we want to continue to keep foundational Black Americans and use that term as a representative or representation of our lineage, we have the ability to do so. And these conversations that we're having online are being monitored, and we need to be very careful about the back and forth. At this point, I think everything that's needed to be said has been said. So unless it's like a panel discussion, I would advise pretty much ignoring their posts, as provocative as they may be and insulting as they may be. I would not allow myself to be easily swayed to get into confrontation or anything with these people online, because they are looking for a reason to designate all of us foundational black Americans as communists. Okay. And so this is a comment here. That's my Ray Ray Aware. That is my X handle. And I was just commenting on something about Huey P. Newton, right? And they were like trying to take credit. Oh, look, Huey P. Newton was in Africa. They put a picture up of a guy, I forget his name or whatever, but he's an African guy, and they had a picture of him and Huey P. Newton together. And just to try to say, like, look, see, we connected, because they keep trying to connect us, through history and different events or whatever. They're trying to make sure that we are connected to Africans when we are clearly trying to delineate. But I just made the comment of, like, none of these people, when Huey P. Newton was down, none of these so-called Africans and Pan-African people was there to try to help him up. And ultimately the man ended up losing his life or whatever. But nobody was there for him when he needed somebody. They went around trying to gather everybody together, to be one or whatever, or help other people out. But when he needed help, they didn't help him. And this idiot right here, penniless Nigerian, decided to respond to that comment with something very idiotic and something incoherent, because it didn't even relate to my statement. But she put what did the FBAs do? And I wasn't about to get in a back and forth with her about that, because all of what our people have done could never, I could never summarize that in a few characters. First of all, so I knew I was going to ignore her. But the part that made me say something and pissed me off a little bit is when she said irrelevant online cult, right? And that's why I wrote my comment there. You see what it says, and it says lineage and cult. What an ignorant comparison, because it is. A lineage is heritage, bloodlines, family traditions, people, history, or whatever. It has nothing to do with a cult. Cults are based on many things, and mostly they're based on, these theologies, and they gather them from different things like religion. They extract their theories from like how you say that, apocalyptic prophecies and esoteric stuff and black magic, and the one thing that they're trying to use is it's called personality centered theory. And this is what they're going to try to use. And they're going to try to make Tariq Nasheed the face of that. They're going to say it's a cult and it's based on personality centered theory. Whereas, Tariq is the leader. That's why they keep saying that. Tariq is the leader, right? Tariq Nasheed is your leader. Their leader is Tariq Nasheed because they're trying to use that theory to define all of us as being in a cult when we're really just sick and tired of their shit. I live in New York City. I've dealt with all of these foreigners. I remember all of them from a child. Some of them were nice people or whatever, but they always had that air about them. They've been disrespectful. A lot of fights have taken place in New York City with different ethnic groups and us. Always us with the different ethnic groups or whatever. And a lot of disrespect, just like you go in their stores because they left us no choice. They priced everybody out. So you go in the stores, they looking at you, or they waiting, or you got to pay a little bit more than the other person or whatever. And a whole bunch of bullshit. A whole bunch of bullshit. I'm not saying that it was just like war all the time between people, that people didn't have relationships or whatever, but it was a lot of disrespect. It was a lot of disrespect, going on or whatever. And so, a lot of us remember this and we've held on, to this stuff for all of these years. And then it's just, you get to your breaking point where you just get tired of people's shit. You get tired of their racism. You get tired of their discrimination and their stupidity as it relates to our group, as if they don't know our history or they're too stupid to even bother to go and learn our history. And so they want to just go to the lowest hanging fruit, which is usually the criminality, amongst us. And they want to just point at that as that being, oh, that's your culture right there. That's who you are right there. Just gang bangings and, killings and drug users and, all this other stuff. They point to a small sector that, is spread out across the states. And they say, black people, that's who you are, because they're fucking limited in their thinking. But the cult thing, this is very dangerous. I want to stay on topic. Tariq Nasheed needs to be very careful. He's very smooth, and I like that he always use comedy or whatever. And don't allow yourself to get really emotional or to make any type of threats, even as much as like kicking somebody's ass or something like that. Don't even say anything like that to them because they're looking for a reason to identify us as a cult because they want to get FBA out the way before, especially before that 2028 election. So these people are going to be coming hard. They're going to be trying to usurp the acronyms very hard or whatever. They're gonna be coming at you with everything, and your main goal is to remain calm and focused. Because, like I said, there is no code. We like Tariq Nasheed. Tariq Nasheed's been around for a long time. We like his products or whatever. His personality, you know what I'm saying, is what attracted us to him. But his sense of humor, and then when he raises money to do events, he actually gets it done. And so people appreciate him for that because there's been so many scammers online. When somebody does what they say they're going to do, people, appreciate that and they respect him for that. But he's not a leader to, us. We don't look at, oh, Tariq Nasheed is my leader or what. He's not our goddamn leader. He's a part of the lineage. He's a part of the foundational Black American lineage. He just happens to be a popular person. We have many popular FBAs and I grew all type of performers and athletes and stuff like that. Are they a cult leaders because we like them? Because we all go out. We love Mary J. Blige. Is Mary J. Blige a cult leader because we like her music? We might copy off of some of her style. So she's a cult leader, y'all. This is really fucking ridiculous. But I want to show you something, as well to try to keep you out of trouble. We show you like how they're trying to use the Black Panther Party, what they use, what the feds use on the Black Panther Party to kind of like classify them as a communist group. Okay, and what you have to be careful for. But I just wanted to show y'all this tweet or whatever and just elaborate and build on the fact because I heard some other FBAs talking about, them coming, and they are, and they're coming with this cult shit. Okay, they're coming with this cult and identity extremist type of shit again. So let's move on. From the vote, I went in the vote and got this document here, and this is just to show you, how society gets when black people start to stand up or whatever, and what FBA is not doing and what you don't want to get involved with, right? But this was a funny one. I really enjoyed this one here. There's so much here, to read if you want to know more about the Panthers and how they were investigating them and how all of this kind of CIA and lining people up kind of started, like killing the revolution before it started. But this is Mr. J. Edgar Hoover from the Federal Bureau of Investigations in Washington D.C. And this is on March 8th, 1970. In regards to someone from Winston-Salem, they were very concerned there. And this little quick letter says, "Sir, I'm frightened and distressed at the terrible inroads that the communists, black and white, have made in our country today. Last week, here in our city, a Negro woman was evicted from her house because of non-payment of rent. The next day, the Black Panthers moved her furniture back into the house. And pictures in our local paper showed the Panthers standing in front of the house armed with rifles and declared they would use them on any law enforcement officers who came to evict the woman again. An anonymous person paid her back rent, so there was no confrontation between the police and Black Panthers. My question is, who controls our city? The police or the Black Panthers? I'm enclosing a letter of explanation to our local paper by the real estate agent who had evicted the woman by court order. Why is it the Black Panthers and other Negro militants create so much violence, then be coddled by the authorities, and yet any white organizations are hounded and persecuted? It seems to me that our country is in a state of siege, a state of siege by these Negro and white communists. And I wonder what can be done to stop it now before it's too late. Now, all they did was help some poor woman stay in her home or whatever and protect her. But see, they are very fearful when black men get militarized in that fashion. And we don't want to do that because we know they will hit us with hard numbers, today by militarizing and going against the country. Like the not fucking around ass niggas. Like the way they approached it or whatever, that was terrible. The way, and that's the name YouTube, that's the name of the group. The way they approached it was very tough. You can't go around in hostility and trying to, use guns to kind of control the situation. Back then, I understood, their frustration, but there was some ways where they could have moved a little bit better. And, maybe they would have had a better defense. But they were very young. These guys, they were very young, and there were teachers and people funding them, right? A lot of people from high society would have parties, and in those parties, they would fundraise for the Panthers. But see, when the time for punishment came, they just simply denied ever knowing the Panthers. And see, they were teaching these guys a lot about communism. Because what the hell these young kids really knew about communism? They started over a traffic light and the police brutality or whatever. What the hell did they know about communism? They were being taught these things, being fed these things. And the same things are happening today. This is why, the president was, reprimanding the college institutions or whatever. And I guess they're going to change the curriculum or not get any more funding, or whatever. But, that's what they're trying to avoid is these teachings, and everybody's walking around talking about everybody's a fascist and everybody's a communist, and people trying to run up in federal buildings and do all of this stuff, and this is what they don't want. But this is not what foundational Black Americans about. Foundational Black American is a lineage, and there are people who want reparations. That's the key to it, is getting reparations. And we'll always be foundational Black Americans. Even they could say, okay, we're going to do reparations tomorrow. We're still going to say we're foundational Black Americans. It's not a threat to anyone to self-identify. It isn't a threat for anybody else to know who they are and kind of have their own lineage and organizations, because this is what we need to focus more on ourselves. That is not a threat to the government or anybody else in society to say, like, yeah, we really need to focus on ourselves. We need to have resources that are just allocated to our needs. And this is what being a foundational Black American is about. Continuing that fight from the ancestors. That's the lineage. That's the heritage, that you pick up the sword and continue to fight. And excuse me, I ain't even mean to say sword, because you got to watch that. But you pick up the mantle, okay? And you continue the fight, for justice and equality within our group. We could no longer afford to pretend that we are allies with these people because they all work against us. And we've seen this. We've seen them work against us. And that's not a shot against the government, anybody else. Just say, hey, y'all work in y'all best interest. Y'all don't care about us or working with us as a team so all of us can eat. You're just concerned with you eating. So we're going to go off and be concerned about us eating. And people are mad about that. And that's their problem because we have the right to do it. And it's not communist to do that. Nobody's trying to form another government. Foundational Black Americans are a lineage, a heritage. It's not about fighting up against the government. Now, I will recommend, right, that you voting, if you want to say, I choose not to vote and I can't tell you, how to vote, but I'm choosing not to vote, that may be more substantial and evading some of these other things that they're trying to put on to all of us. Just saying, then telling people not to participate in the system, because saying vote in the couch could be looked at as a form of going up against government because you're telling people not to participate in the system. And this is what they're mad about, right? And, I don't think legally so much you can't do it, but it can be looked at as going up against, the establishment, and they, it's something that they could use, maybe not to really lock you up so much, but to, take your channel away or, any profitability from your life, because they will do that. And they will, even if you sign FOIA requests on, politicians and stuff like that, because we have the right to know certain things in government, they will, red flag your name and they'll have you investigated for wanting to like investigate them. So, they can line you up in several ways. And my goal in this video is to just, try to inform Foundation Black Americans to just be careful, because we are emotional. We get emotional. And it's understandable that we're emotional because we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot. Our ancestors have been through a lot. We talk to people. People act like they don't understand. And that's by design. It's by design that they want to act like, well, and what is the lineage, and well, what happened to you or whatever, as if we can't go back into the 90s and just look at the crack epidemic and see how that destroyed several families. Not everybody black was on crack, but we all got family, and we were all affected by that shit. Even if your family members were selling it, then they went to jail. When we know that that was put into our communities to fund the war. That whatever, I forget the name of it, but you know what I'm talking about or whatever. So at the end of the day, we can go back and say that the government has done things to us, personally or whatever. After Jim Crow was supposed to have been ended, they still continue to redline us. They still openly, you'll have buildings that will not rent to a black person. They'll say no, especially here in New York. They'll be like, no, we don't want you here or whatever, and they don't really care because nothing is really gonna happen to them here in New York. They'll get a little pat on the wrist. Oh, bad, bad. You shouldn't have did that to the black person. But nothing is really going to result to anything here. And they continue to rent like that, and it pushes you in certain areas. It keeps you in those certain areas, right? And many of us don't want to live in a buildings anywhere around it, but a lot of people want better. A lot of people want better, and when we get a little better, we shouldn't be forced to share our better. We say, okay, this is a black community, and we want to keep it that way. We like the foods, we like the clothes that we got, and we should, we want to keep it that way. We should. Our communities are always broken up, but white people are able to maintain a lot of their different communities. Some of their communities, they allow people to come in and they don't mind as much or whatever like that. But then, the most of them they don't. And they let things be happen violently to people. People have been unalive for moving into certain areas or and definitely traumatized, so it's like, hey, we want some areas where that's not combating the government, anybody else. It's just, saying that what we want, and we have the right to do that. Okay, and it doesn't mean that we are against anybody, and nobody's advocating to hurt Africans, even with the boycott. That's nonviolent. That's Dr. King. You don't put your hands, we don't got to put our hands on the Africans. Hey, don't go to the braiding shops. Nonviolent. Dr. King's motto. Okay, so what they're doing is wrong, but we do have to be very careful. And I wanted to bring this up because I thought it was funny, you know what I'm saying? I thought it was funny. I thought it was cool that they got her back in the apartment. I thought it was funny that, this guy seems to be losing his mind over, somebody just saving a woman's apartment. Oh, the world is going to shit because these guys, were able to save this, woman from being put out on the street or whatever, who was clearly having hard times or whatever. But, people get afraid. It's true
Yeah,
that
so they
people
don't
get
want it with
afraid
you guys,
when
you
we get
know.
organized.
So be careful with us anyway. They don't want it with any of us, but especially the male energy. They don't want it with you guys. And I don't want to see anybody who's a decent, black male who is advocating for the righteous reasons for his people to be, caught up in any type of stuff. They scared. You guys take off. You take flight like the Black Death right here. Y'all take off. And people are fearful of that. So just be mindful of people's fears. And I'm gone.